Is Ms. Weiner on the floor of the House? The chair recognizes Ms. Weiner to explain the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, members, this is a simple amendment that adds to the purposes for which an institution of higher education exists in Texas. Representative Kemple made some good changes in the committee substitute to the purposes of an institution of a higher education to include a place that can support an environment with academic freedom and intellectual inquiry, as well as a place where students have the opportunity to learn and succeed without regard to their identity or their political affiliation or social background. My amendment simply adds another category for the type of environment that Texas University should be seeking to create. And it's an environment with racial, ethnic, and religious diversity that reflects the racial, ethnic, and religious diversity of the state of Texas. I know that we all celebrate diversity in this building. I know that the background and purpose of this bill actually really speaks to wanting to work towards the goal of diversity, and that instead we're just having a disagreement with how. So I believe that this amendment should be acceptable to the members of this body. If we really do want universities that reflect the people of the state of Texas, if we want universities that include our increasingly diversifying state, this should be an easy addition to the purposes. Texas, members, is now a minority-majority state. There are more people in the state of Texas who are not white, non-Latino, than who are. And we want that reflected in our institutions of higher education. As many of y'all know, I'm currently a student at the University of Texas Law School, and I don't see that diversity yet in my classroom, despite ongoing efforts made by the university. And so for us to make sure that we continue to achieve that goal of every single student having access to higher education, regardless of the color of their skin or their ethnic background, we should enshrine that goal in this legislation as well. And I'm happy to yield to questions if there are some.
Ms. Goodwin, for what
Will she
purpose?
yield for
Will the
questions?
gentlelady yield for questions?
I yield.
She yields for questions.
So, Representative Zwiener, it sounds like your amendment just says that our public universities should reflect the diversity of the state. Is that correct?
Yes, my amendment simply says that part of the purpose of the universities here in Texas is to create an environment that reflects the diversity that we all live around every single day.
So do you think that is what we have currently? Do you think that our universities reflect the diversity of our state currently?
I think our state universities, our public universities have made great strides, but quite frankly, I do not think we are there yet. I certainly, in my time on a campus right now, notice that my classmates and my professors are disproportionately white. Of course, there's a number of historical reasons that lead into that. And I hope that we can keep focused on the goal of making sure that door is open to everyone. Because you and I both know that the color of your skin, your ethnic background, your religious background, those have nothing to do with your actual inherent ability to succeed at an institution of higher education. And so if there's no difference in inherent ability, the question we're left with is what's getting in the way? And how do we help keep moving forward and getting rid of those barriers so that the face of our universities truly represents the face of Texas?
So the author of the bill said that the DEI programs that he's aware of were not effective. And so that's one of the reasons for the bill is that we're spending a lot of money on DEI departments that really aren't improving the diversity in our universities. Do you agree with that premise?
I don't agree with that, but I don't think it actually has much to do with this particular amendment. While the author and I disagree on the effectiveness of DEI programs, we, according to him, according to the bill, background and purpose, we agree that diversity, racial, ethnic, and religious diversity are important goals. in our institutions of higher education. So my amendment does not prescribe any particular way of achieving that goal. It just puts into statute that that is one of the purposes of our institutions of higher education, to serve students regardless of their racial, ethnic, and religious diversity, and to try and foster an environment that reflects that diversity.
Well, I agree with the goal. I think that we all agree that our universities ought to reflect the makeup of the state. And so I will support your amendment.
Thank you, Representative Goodwin.
Ms. Collier, for
Mr. Speaker, will the gentlelady yield for questions?
I do yield.
She yields for questions.
Okay, so I appreciate you bringing this amendment, because all you're asking is that we have student populations or faculty that reflect the racial diverse makeup of Texas, right?
Absolutely. I want to make sure that our faculty, our staff, our students move towards that goal of reflecting the face of Texas.
So are you familiar with the student population of African Americans at the University of Texas?
I am not advised of that number. Are you,
my
Representative
understanding is
Collier?
that the population has been stagnant. They have not increased the student population, and I'm very concerned that if we eliminate policies and procedures that promote diversity, it's going to be even worse. So we're not going to be able to we're not going to have progress if we eliminate these programs and policies that are geared towards increasing diversity at these universities. So I definitely want to make sure that we have a provision in place, because my understanding is that the African American population in Texas is over 12%, and at the University of Texas, it's about 5 or 6%. So
that's very concerning that it's about half, especially since we know our proportions of our population for people of color are actually higher among younger college-age groups. So I'm concerned, especially if that number is remaining stagnant, when we know that almost all of the growth in Texas between the 2010 and the 2020 census was due to growth among the African American population and the Hispanic population. That growth should be reflected in our halls of higher education. And I think that if we want to see that growth continue, if we want to see it be reflected, if we want to see the gains of the past few decades continue or break stagnation patterns that you've brought up, we need to make it clear that a core goal, a core purpose of our institutions of higher education is to reflect the face of the people of Texas.
in fact, that would promote equity.
Excuse me?
It would promote equity if we did that.
It would build equity, and it would make sure that young people across Texas, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or religious background, have the same access to education, one of the best educations in the world, and that same stepping stone to go on and succeed in the workforce and the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate your amendment, and I'll be voting for it.
Members, everyone today has said that we all agree that our universities should be diverse places where all Texans are welcome and celebrated. Members, if that's the case, this amendment should be an easy yes vote, because all my amendment does is says that it is part of the purpose of our institutions of higher education to build an environment that reflects the racial, ethnic, and religious diversity that is here in Texas. I move adoption.
The chair recognizes Mr. Kimball in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this amendment is just contrary to what we're trying to do here. We're limiting DEI offices at the same time promoting recruitment for everybody. So I will respectfully oppose.
The chair recognizes Mrs. Weiner to close on the amendment.
Members, I'm going to be frank. I'm a little confused about why Representative Kimball is opposing this amendment. My amendment does not reverse any of the substantive provisions in the bill regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion offices. All my amendment does is says one of the purposes of our institutions of higher education is to represent the people of Texas. If we do not want to go back to a day where our institutions are segregated, if we do not want to go back to a day where the number of people of color in our universities was breathtakingly low, then we should vote yes on this amendment. We should add this to this bill. The only reason not to take this amendment is if the intent of this bill is in fact discriminatory. And that is what multiple folks have stood up here today and said that no, the intent of this bill is not discriminatory. So if the intent of this bill is to try and preserve diverse student bodies and faculty bodies at our universities, vote yes. If you don't support diverse student bodies, vote no. It's as simple as that. I move adoption.
Mrs. Weiner sends an amendment. The amendment is not acceptable. The question occurs in adoption. Amendment. The record vote. The clerk read the bell. Mrs. Weiner voting aye. Mr. Kemp voting nay. Mr. Toth. Mr. Ashby voting no. Have all members voted? There being 60 ayes and 83 nays, the amendment fails to adopt. The following amendment. The clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by